You ever have someone rip something right out of your hands and stomp it into the dirt, screaming about safety, while all you can do is stand there and watch the work you poured your heart into get torn apart? That was me, standing in my own backyard, clutching building permits with muddy boot prints all over them, while Priscilla, the self appointed queen of our neighborhood, howled into her megaphone, yelling about how this death trap will never be built. Yeah, welcome to Willowbrook Estates, where HOA presidents roam with clipboards and a taste for blood. But let me slow down for a second. My name's Garrett, and trust me, I've seen a lot worse than a bulldozer stalled in my driveway. Spent over 20 years as a Marine Corps combat engineer, survived 3 tours, lost plenty of good people, came home with a spine that aches in the rain, and a head that sometimes won't quiet down at night. But nothing, and I mean nothing, hit harder than losing Elena. My wife, she passed from cancer 2 years back, and right before she went, she made me promise her something. Build that pool, Garrett, for your back, for your mind. Promise me you'll heal. How do you say no to that when the only thing you want is to see her smile one more time? So yeah, I bought the biggest corner lot in Willowbrook, paid extra for it, made sure it had room for the pool. I wanted to be able to swim laps, stare out at the community park, maybe even catch kids playing while I worked the kinks out of my back. Therapy, you know, everything above board. I did the soil tests, the setbacks, the electrical, the permits. If there was a form, I filled it. If there was a box to check, it was checked twice. 8 months of this. The county folks at engineering knew me by name. The day my contractor, Frank, rolled up with the excavator, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was going to keep my promise. That's when I heard the sharp click of designer heels on gravel, and I just knew. Trouble had arrived. Priscilla Thornfield, president of the HOA, 60-ish crisp white, BMW license plate, HOA boss. She came storming across my lawn, waving a clipboard and measuring tape like she was about to conduct a military inspection. Mr. Steele, we need to discuss your unauthorized construction project. Authorized, I said, waving my permits at her. County approved, see? She didn't even blink. The county doesn't understand our community standards. She tore those permits right out of my hands, ripped them up, threw them in the mud, started screaming about children's safety, how military folks don't get suburban living, something about property lines and drowning kids. Frank killed the bulldozer's engine. The workers looked like they wanted to sink into the dirt. Meanwhile, the whole neighborhood could probably hear her through that megaphone, and I could feel every eye in 100 yards watching the crazy pool guy get chewed out. Here's the thing, though. She didn't just want to stop my pool. She wanted to make an example out of me. Grieving widower, new to the neighborhood, just trying to keep a promise to his dead wife. Easy target, right? Someone she could bulldoze, pun intended. But there's something she didn't count on. You see, combat engineers, we don't just build bridges. We build them so they don't come down. And if someone tries, well, let's just say we know a thing or two about creative solutions. The next morning, official letter in the mailbox, covenant violation. Unauthorized construction, she wrote. Daily fines if I didn't stop. I laughed, couldn't help it. Called my lawyer, Marcus Webb. He listens, sips his burnt coffee, and goes, Garrett, she just handed you a harassment lawsuit. HO. As can't override county approvals. That's established law. But Priscilla wasn't just going to back off. No, she called an emergency HOA meeting. Packed the room with her loyalists. She even had a poster-sized photo of my yard with the headline, Dangerous Construction, like she was pitching a true crime special. I stood up in the back, held up my shiny new copies of the permits, this time in plastic sleeves. County approved, right here, I said. Priscilla's voice cold as January County permits. Don't supersede our safety standards. Our covenant says all water features must be approved by the board. This is where most folks cave. They just want peace. But I'd spent 3 months reading every line in that covenant. Actually, I submitted my plans 8 months ago. Request 2024 156. And you never replied in 30 days. That means automatic approval section 4.2. The whole place went dead silent. She blustered something about missing paperwork. But I had the receipts, the delivery confirmations. Mrs. Clearwater Dorothy, 2 streets over, she actually smiled at me. First smile I'd seen in months. After that, it was like the spell had been broken. Dorothy dropped by with homemade pie and whispered that Priscilla had been terrorizing the neighborhood for years, measuring grass, handing out violations, targeting anyone who pushed back. Most folks are too scared to fight, she said. Meanwhile, my security cameras started catching some real interesting stuff. Maintenance guys accidentally damaging sprinklers, dumping chemicals on people's roses. Petty, but effective. Then I found out Priscilla's own place wasn't exactly up to code. A deck without permits, a fence too high, paint that wasn't on the approved list. So Webb says, let's demand she follow her own rules, or face a federal lawsuit for discrimination. We gathered the evidence, documented every step, but the attacks just kept coming. She brought county inspectors to my door, real ones' badges, and everything. Someone had filed a thick stack of complaints full of technical jargon about drainage, electrical, unstable soil. Thing is, the complaints were written so professionally, I almost had to respect it. For about 4 hours, they poked and measured and flipped through pages. Finally, the lead inspector shook her head and said, Mr. Steele, your installation exceeds code requirements. I was in the clear. But she showed me something odd: photo soil samples, even drainage maps. Only they weren't from my yard. Someone had mixed up evidence from other sites and submitted it as proof against me. Anonymous tip line, the inspector said. But the legal letterhead was all Thornfield Realty. That crossed a line criminal territory, now not just HOA, bullying. Next thing I know, Priscilla's at my door, again, flanked by her board. Let's work out an arrangement, she says, voice all honey and venom. You abandon the pool, and we make the complaints go away. Then her sidekick Janet slips up and says they could mention my disability status in the complaints, PTSD to anger management, that kind of thing. Using my own war injuries against me. That's not just ugly, that's illegal. Ladies, I said, this conversation's over. I sat out back watching the sun drop behind the mountains, wondering how Elena would see all this. That's when it hit me. Priscilla hadn't picked a fight with a grieving old vet. She'd picked a fight with someone who'd spent decades learning how to turn enemy tactics back on them. Time to stop playing defense. And Priscilla, she was just getting started. One morning, I opened the door to news vans and a reporter in my face. How do you respond to allegations you threatened HOA board members? Turns out Priscilla filed a police report saying I'd threatened violence, twisting Janet's dumb comment into proof that I was an unstable vet with anger issues. Suddenly, my pool is suspended. My name's on the news as the dangerous veteran. She'd flipped the whole narrative. Webb, my lawyer, tells me we can fight it, but it'll take months. Reputation, meanwhile, is shot. But Dorothy's not done. She slips me a flash drive with security footage from the night of the so-called incident. Video's crystal clear, me, calm, Priscilla screaming. Janet making her little discriminatory aside. No threats, no anger, just them plotting their story afterward. Turns out Priscilla was coordinating with other HOA presidents across Phoenix, swapping strategies for crushing problem residents. They called it the nuclear option. Filing false police reports to ruin people's lives. Then, like a punch to the gut, Child Protective Services shows up. Anonymous complaints about my mental state about my daughter Sophia visiting for the summer. They want to do a home safety check. Mr. Steele, the investigator, says these complaints look coordinated and potentially fraudulent. Be careful. They were coming after everything I had left. But here's the thing about fighting dirty: when you go too far, you leave a trail. Priscilla had gotten cocky. All the documentation, all the emails, all the fingerprints. She'd built her own noose. That night, hunched over Elena's old dining table, I spread out the property maps, looking for anything she'd missed. And I found it, a century-old underground creek running through my lot. Something called riparian rights, legal gold. Next day, I called a geological survey. Turns out if you've got a natural spring or creek under your property in Arizona, you've got rights. Water rights. The state can't block you, the HOA can't touch you. Nobody can stop a legitimate environmental restoration project. So I got creative. Restoration of native waterway, environmental education platform, all of it perfectly legal and bulletproof to HOA interference. Operation Moat, I called it. With Pete, the survey guy, and Frank, the contractor, we dug, the channel lined it with native stone, set up circulation, planted native flowers. Hell, we even got university researchers involved. Dr. Martinez brought her students to study the habitat. What looked like a fancy pond to the neighborhood was actually a medieval-style defensive barrier. And yes, there was a bridge retractable no less, so tours could cross, but nobody else could come in when I didn't want them to. Priscilla tried everything to stop it. Called every county office, hired an attorney, brought a photographer in the whole HOA board to my yard shouting that I was building a fortress. But every time I handed over the permits. Legal, environmental, educational. Every word out of her mouth, every threat, every discriminatory comment caught on camera by someone. Her own attorney looked like he wanted to sink into the ground. Then came the sabotage. Someone, I wonder who rented a pump truck and tried to drain the whole project overnight. Nearly killed the fish. But the spring refilled the channels within hours, nature's own little revenge. And this time, the security footage caught Priscilla herself directing the operation from her BMW at 2 a.m. She tried one last time, filed for a restraining order, claimed I was building flood hazards. But the evidence was already in place. Webb laid out the case for federal vandalism, and the county handed over the tapes to the authorities. Then, oh, you'll love this, Priscilla rallied a protest in front of my house, waving signs about veteran terrorism, screaming about how I'd turned the neighborhood into a war zone. Only this time, my neighbors had had enough. Counter-protesters showed up signs reading "Support Environmental Education" and "Stop HOA Harassment." Dorothy took the megaphone and read out Priscilla's greatest hits: false police reports, discriminatory harassment, sabotage. The sheriff's deputies arrived, but they weren't there for me. They were there for Priscilla. The county had received reports about environmental vandalism, and they wanted her to answer some questions. A few days later, we held the grand opening for the restoration project. University folks, county officials, news crews, neighborhood kids, over 200 people packed into my backyard and the park behind it. The best part, Priscilla in her bathrobe and slippers stormed across the lawn screaming about illegal fortresses and community values. The news cameras caught every second her ranting, the sheriff stepping in, Dr. Martinez calmly explaining that this was an environmental education site, not a fortress. I walked over to the bridge, laid my hand on the lever, and told her and everyone watching, "You're right, Priscilla. This is a moat. A fully legal, environmentally beneficial, county-approved moat. And thanks to Arizona water rights, you can't touch it." Webb stepped up with the paperwork. EPA, nomination county recognition, and most satisfying of all, the federal lawsuit and criminal investigation into Priscilla's campaign of harassment and sabotage. Deputy Martinez stepped forward and put her in handcuffs right in front of the whole community. She'd weaponized every system against me, and in the end, she destroyed herself. Her board resigned. The HOA collapsed. The neighborhood finally got to breathe again. 6 months later, the place is thriving. Priscilla lost her license, pled guilty to environmental vandalism, and now lives in a tiny apartment, no HOA in sight. Willowbrook's got a new board with Dorothy as president. They rewrote the rules transparency term, limits, penalties for discrimination. My property's a certified wildlife habitat, a field trip destination for local schools. University students come study. My moat turns out medieval engineering works wonders for conservation. And the pool? Yeah, I built it. Right where Elena wanted. It's not just for me, though. Sophia, my daughter, spent the summer giving tours, naming the fish, helping with the gardens. We started a scholarship in Elena's name for students in environmental engineering. Property values up 22%. National Geographic even sent a reporter. So, what's the lesson? Document everything. Learn your rights. And never underestimate the quiet guy in the corner, reading the rules while everyone else is busy complaining. But let me ask you, have you ever had someone underestimate you so badly, so completely, that they miss what really matters? Maybe they see what's on the surface, but they never bother to look deeper. Maybe they think they've got you cornered, but you're just biding your time, studying the terrain, waiting for the right moment. I'd love to hear your stories. Ever fought back against a bully with a clipboard? Ever found yourself weaponized by the very system meant to protect you? Share your thoughts, your battles, your victories, or your wounds right down below. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't winning the war, it's living so well that nobody can deny you earned it.